Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment, podcast number 104. John Opalewski, our mentor, tormentor, and friend, is here with us today. John, how are you?
Hey, Jim. I'm doing well. It's super good to be with you today.
It is. Yeah. I'm excited about today because I think, we were kind of closing out Pod 103, how to hire well, having all the grid to ask the right questions. But if you hire the right person and you use them the wrong way, they're not going to stay. And one of the things that I wanted for my kids growing up was a youth pastor that was there from the beginning to the end. A children's pastor was there from the beginning to the end. There really is something to longevity in this. A groups pastor that stays for 20 years knows more about the groups in that community than one that's there for 20 minutes. So we do get better if we do this well over time. And I'm looking forward to this. So take us away. Staff retention do's and don'ts, episode 104.
All right. So I think failing to retain key staff can hurt an organization on multiple levels. It can hurt an organization financially. Yeah. And I think we talked about that in our last episode. There's a loss of time. There's a loss of credibility. And when it comes to retaining staff, I'd like to throw out this quote from J. Donald Walters, because I think it's a good quote. He says this: leadership is an opportunity to serve. Yeah. It's not a trumpet call to self-importance.
Yes.
And, I don't know if I came into pastoral leadership without understanding, Jim.
Yeah.
Hopefully by the time I exited that, I got it, but I didn't start out that way. I had a pastor tell me this the other day. I thought it was so fascinating, Jim. He said, for many years, I always felt like people were there to serve my mission, my vision, and there's truth to that, right? Yeah. But he says, as I've grown as a leader, I've seen more and more that my role is to help people achieve their purpose. Understand their why. And I thought that was such a mature thing that I heard him say. What do you think about that thought before we really jump into the
I think that God's workmanship created in Christ Jesus to do good works that God prepared in advance for us to do. Ephesians 2:10, then you get to Ephesians 4:10, and God gives us apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers to prepare God's people for works of service.
Right.
So the same Aragon work in 2:10 is the same word Aragon works in Ephesians 4. So our ministries are their ministries. Our success is only through their success. And you look at the model that Jesus uses, David uses, Moses uses, the shepherd and the sheep. I'm not here to eat mutton. I'm here to produce big, fat, fluffy, healthy, happy, prospering. The green pasture is not for me. The still water is not for me. It's for the prosperity of those that I lead. But I also serve. I'm the leader of the sheep, but I lead them by serving them. Right. Because I have a perspective. Because I'm 6'1" and they're 3'0", so I get to see a little bit farther. I get to see the wolves. I think it's a wonderful way to live.
Yeah. So I'd like to share some retention ideas with our listeners and watchers today. If you've got great people on your team and you want to keep them, and Jim, I try to operate like this to the best of my ability with the Converge coaching team.
I'm on your team. Yeah.
And I don't do it 100% all the time, but I want to. I want to get to that place where I'm just totally consistent. We'll throw out a few ideas here and then we can just talk about some of them. Here's the first. If you want to retain staff, the first thing I think is important to understand is they need a good relationship with you.
Yes. Yeah, they do.
The most important relationship you have at work is the one with the person you report to.
Yeah.
So talented people, great staff members typically don't leave organizations. They leave bad bosses.
Yes, true. So true. Yeah.
And so becoming a better boss, what does that look like? Well, there's tons of material out there on how to be a better boss.
Yeah.
Spend some time reading and learning how to develop that part of your leadership. So just building, Jim, I think retaining staff, there's such a relational aspect to that.
Huge.
It matters, that people know you care, that they can come to you, they can talk to you, that you're actually interested in them beyond what they produce for you at work.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's important. Here's another retention strategy, and that's clarity. Yeah. clarity about expectations, about performance, about deadlines,
Yeah.
even clarity about the future. I think, and I'm interested what you think about this one, Jim. Clarity reduces your team's stress.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. If you tell me the rules of the game and how to win, and then I score a goal, I celebrate it.
Yeah.
If you don't tell me that that's how you score a goal, or I need 10 goals before it's celebrated, that's not fair. I don't leave me guessing as to what we call success around here, what we call failure around here. I actually have a guideline. It's a user's manual for being on my team. So it's got some pretty weird stuff in there. But like number one is I'm quirky. And if you try to change that in me, we'll both find the experience unpleasant because I've always been quirky, and I doesn't mean I'm inconsistent, but I may step in on your meeting and sit down and listen to what you're doing because I'm interested in what you're doing. And I may never walk into a meeting. Don't be offended either way. I'm a little bit hard to predict, but I promise you at all times, what I'm working for is your good. I'm not looking over your shoulder critically or, so just that clarity of expectation. And I think that the other one too, a good relationship. I go golfing with one of my staff members. I'm doing a book study with all my staff members. Mm-hmm. I'm going to a long range distance shooting match on Friday with another one. Like what they're interested in, I try to be interested in. But I'm interested, I invite them to come along. So if I'm going fishing and I don't have two guys in my boat with me, why? I'd rather two of my guys go with me. It's a little bit difficult with female staff members, but my wife does that. So I think clarity and relationship. I know there's a lot of other things in your list.
Yeah,
you get those two things right, there's a lot of change in your pocket for anything else that you get wrong.
I think so. And I think that's correct. Here's a third one, permission to speak freely.
Yeah.
When a staff member, when a person on your team can respectfully tell you what's on their mind without being afraid.
Yeah.
Whether it's a great idea they want to share or some constructive criticism, they will absolutely love working alongside you.
Yeah.
And I know that for me, I've had to develop that, Jim. I didn't come to the leadership table understanding how to receive constructive criticism very well. And it was because I was insecure. There was a deep insecurity in me as a young guy.
Yes.
And I found that constructive criticism, I always interpret it through the lens of personal criticism. You're not good enough. What's wrong with you? You don't have all the answers. Well, right. God never intended for me to have all the answers. But I didn't know that as a 22-year-old. I thought I was supposed to know everything. And so letting people, and this permission to speak freely is not permission to speak disrespectfully.
Right.
I'm not encouraging that. I see a trend of that among younger leaders that there can be this sense of disrespect. Yeah. And let me just say this to young leaders, that's not going to get you anywhere.
No.
But out the door. There is a way to share criticism. There's a way to share your point of view, and it has to be done with respect and with the good of the organization in mind.
Yeah. Can I also say this? I think sometimes,
please.
With the insecurity, sometimes people do mature to a place where they do have a good vantage point to see how to make things better.
Yes.
And some people are critical. Some people, they're getting even with you because the sins of your predecessors, their first name was pastor too, that kind of stuff. But sometimes sometimes God's preparing them to lead. So they start to kind of design the organization that God's preparing for them.
Correct.
And it's almost like an adolescent phase of maturity. I don't mean to demean them like they're immature, but when I see my guys starting to say, if I were the pastor, I think I'd do this or talk more about that. I take them to lunch and say, well, let's talk about you being a pastor, because I'm a huge fan. And it isn't a threat. Like, if you want to keep criticizing me, you're out the door. It's like, if you're starting to envision, if something on your heart is there, I want to hear about it, because and I say that I'm a big fan. I'm your biggest fan. If God's put a dream in your heart, again, I'm here to prepare God's people for works of service.
Right.
If you didn't use this place, but there aren't many 80-year-old youth pastors. So we are going to graduate some staff members, other things. And I want them to know they can share their heart with me, even if it comes off as corrective. I would never do that. I would do this. I'd say why, and listen to them. Sometimes they don't know. I would sell the building and just go portable. But by the time we added up all the rental space, it was twice as much as a mortgage payment.
Yeah.
But they didn't know that. That's one thing. That's teachable. The other thing, sometimes though, it's time to go. In a good way. We graduate people. We don't fire them,
Yep. So that's, I think, an important piece of retaining staff. Here's another one, letting your staff do what they're best at.
Oh, please. Yeah.
While at the same time resisting that temptation to hover.
Yeah.
Can I encourage you, if you have a staff, give them space to use their gifts?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can't offer helpful suggestions or perspective, but please resist the temptation to redo their work for them. You know, there are some helicopter bosses who micromanage their staff, and they get in the way of the tasks. They don't trust their staff's capability. And I think their intention is good, Jim. I really do. Yeah. But their actions lend to a revolving door, because most talented, self-respecting, character-filled leaders don't want micromanagement.
No. It slows everything down. And one of my favorite pastors, by the way, that I ever worked for, this was the issue. And before I sent a note to say, hey, it was great grabbing a Coke with you the other day, let's do it again real soon, he had to read it to see what was there, who it was sent to, what are the ramifications, have you considered this, have you? And I finally told him, I said, listen, I think there's like 30 kids. I said, if a month from now there aren't 60 kids and everybody's happy, I'll give you my resignation. But if there are, I'll make you a bet, stay out of my way, let me do my thing. And a month from now, if their youth group hasn't doubled and everybody's happy, I'll resign. If not, then we have a new working agreement, which is I have a little bit more autonomy. I'm not waiting for you to get back from a hospital visitation before I can lick an envelope and send it. Because at the end, I'm not going to send a thank you note. I'm gonna ignore that part because it takes too long through your tutelage. And a month later, we had 70 kids. He was happy, I was happy, and it was good. It was that constructive.
Yes.
It wasn't like you're micromanaging and I hate you, I'm going to quit. It was, I'll make you a deal. And he bought it. He went for the deal.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
And I think you raise a good point there, Jim. You know, that I think that the and this is not to bosses, this is to employees right now. This sentence is, you have, in some ways, you got to earn that.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So if you do good work, chances are your boss won't micromanage you as much. Now, again, there are exceptions to that. Sure. But generally speaking, if you do your job well and you do things on time and they're done, with all of the parameters that matter, chances are you'll get more rope. And over time, by the time I was in year 4 of being a youth pastor at Saginaw First Assembly, my pastor had given me more rope than any lead pastor should ever give a youth pastor. But we built trust. Yes. And so that took time. Let me give you a few more real quick, because I think we're coming against time here. If you want to retain staff, make sure they have the right tools to get their job done. Training, resources. One thing the business world tends to do better than the church world is providing great training, ongoing training for their people. Appreciation. Yeah. Showing appreciation. I think when you commend a job well done, what you're doing is you're creating organizational glue. Yeah. Paying attention, not just to a job well done, paying attention to birthdays and anniversaries and national fill in the blank, kind of days. Yeah. Create a culture of appreciation. And I think most people stay where they're appreciated. Yes. And I think of appreciation as a deposit. In the relational bank, it builds trust. And Jim, when the time comes for a hard conversation, I've got a lot of change in my pocket with that person, and it's a lot better chance that constructive conversation, that difficult conversation, will be better received. Yeah. What do you think about the appreciation one? Because I think this one's so important. I'd like you just to share with me.
I just want to flip the paradigm from boss and employee to parent and child. Okay. I don't mean to make that like they're inferior, they're younger, they're immature, but if I'm going to discipline my son, I should have probably shown up to 3 of his wrestling practices, played golf with him, asked him how his day was and listened intentfully, shared meals. And I say, hey, with the way you spoke to your mother the other day disturbed me because we're gentlemen and you're a little aggressive with her. And I want you to apologize. Contact with me, but
hey Jim, you kind of stopped there for a minute. You said just come back in that last 30 seconds. Share that again, because I think it was important what you're going to say.
Yeah, the thought of employee employer, I think, is an inferior and maybe even not biblical. It's good language. I know what we're all talking about.
Yeah.
But a father to a child is maybe a better analogy, because we're talking about people's lives, not just livelihoods. So if you're building a car, there's bosses and employees. If you're building a church, there's brothers and sisters, there's spiritual fathers and mothers. So I think keeping that in mind, if all I ever do is call my son in to tell him what he did wrong, he's not going to want to be with me. If I played golf with him, if we took family vacations together, if we shared a dozen meals, and I say, hey, I want to bring this one thing to your attention, and that one thing is you're a little bit rude to your mom, and that's not the way that weekend men treat women. That's not our ethos, that's not our culture. And I'm going to ask you now to apologize and make things right. And it's a teachable moment from a father, not if you ever talk to somebody that way again, you're fired. Right. We don't treat our sons in a hired way. We're responsible for their long-term, and our daughters as well. I only have sons, that's why I say sons. But
sure,
I think expanding it beyond just the parameters of employee employer to family. We're to treat each other like family, which means I'm directly responsible for their maturity in some way.
Yep. Yeah. That's so good. And that term spiritual family, I've heard several churches use that to describe their staff. Yeah. And that doesn't mean they don't hold each other accountable. Right. That doesn't mean that sometimes there's departures. Yeah. But that whole thought process, I love. I appreciate you bringing that up and pushing up on that so much. You might be listening or watching today and say, well, why does all this matter? Why did Jim and John spend 20 minutes talking about retaining staff? Why should I work hard at that? Well, first of all, because it's the right thing to do. Yeah. Let's just say that. It's just the right thing to do. Yeah. And secondly, because, listen really closely, A players don't grow on trees. Yeah. And if you want a talented team around you, you're going to have to learn how to cultivate this relationship that encompasses all of these aspects that we shared today. Being better at making the place you guys serve together in a great place to serve, a wonderful place to serve. I had one job in the corporate world, Jim, where I had to spend, this is no exaggeration, for a year. I had such a bad boss. For a year, I spent 20 minutes sitting up in bed, talking myself into going into work every day. I mean, in retrospect, I should have left long before that. But man, that relationship was broken, and there was nothing I could do to repair it. A players don't grow on trees. And thirdly, if you get this right, it will save you a ton of leadership capital and financial capital as well. So for all those reasons, it really matters how you approach this most important subject. Yeah. And I would say, John, too, it's not like, hey, do this on Monday and then forget about it. This has to be part of your culture. This has to be ingrained. And again, if you take care of your people really well, they take care of their people really well. Mm-hmm. It creates a culture. I know at church, you were a part of the staff there, but one of the things about their culture that's always stood out to me is no one criticizes. They confront, they talk, they resolve, but no one sits back and goes, yeah, that pastor or that staff member, it wouldn't be tolerated by the average member. That's right. And I think that starts in the pulpit. It goes on to the staff meeting, It goes on to the golf course and the bowling alley and the restaurants, and then it filters down. So everybody has a healthy respect for everybody. And that's right. That's one of the most amazing cultures I've ever come in contact with. It was so immune, so immunized from the common diseases of our day that it's brilliant. And that's a part of this for sure. Yeah. Great. All right. Well, John, thank you for your time again today. I know we've used it all up, but it's been well used. And I just hope everybody, like, if you're dealing with this and I got this, but I didn't get that, I need to talk to John more about this. How would they do that? It's very easy. Just go to convergecoach.com, click on the contact us link, and then you can just fill out a form. It's like a little 3-line form, send it to us, and you will, we'll give you a call. We'll talk for 30 minutes, no charge, just to see if we can help.
And you'll enjoy it. It'll be a good 30
I hope so.
Yeah, it is. It's just fun. So God bless you, our dear listeners and watchers. We hope to see you again soon as you continue to lead from a line.